Hello and welcome to the Airbus A340. Today we're going to take a look at putting this down on a standard NDB approach, the old school NDB approaches. Now granted, we know it's Airbus, you can load it into the MCDU and it'll fly the NDB approach for you, pretty much like an RNAV. But we're going to do it old school style. The NDB approach will fly it manually, so we're currently on a hold and I'm going to introduce you to this one. Quick reminder that the channel has now broken off for the Forged Alliance Forever stuff, so if you're looking for Forged Alliance Forever replays, those are no longer going to appear on this channel, the Games with Brains channel. You need to subscribe to the FAFcast channel if you're interested in that. Leave a link in the description, but for now, back on with the approach video. I would recommend, if you're into doing strange and / unusual approaches / something with a little bit different, adds a little bit of an extra challenge, get them in, because NDBs are drying up. I know I've said it before and I'll say it again. NDB approaches worldwide right now are just getting deleted across the board. They're deleting these beacons. They're turning them off. They're uprooting them. They're getting rid of them. They're getting rid of all the NDB approaches really thick and fast. And they're all getting replaced with the new fandangled RNPs. And so make sure you get it in, because, again, I think 2 or 3 years' time, I'm not sure there's going to be anything left. So with that said, let's take a look while we're on the hold. We'll see if we can catch it next time round. Coming in, La Rochelle, France. Why La Rochelle? Well, I've been doing a lot of U-boat missions on the Games with Brains channel lately, and currently I am based out of La Rochelle. And I take a look. Oh look, they've got a runway. And then to my surprise, as I look further, they've also got a pure NDB style approach. And what I really like about this NDB approach, as we see, is that it does not stipulate the DME equipment required. Can't tell you how many NDB approaches I've seen lately, and you know, yeah, it's based on an NDB, and then you take a look and almost always number one here it says DME required, and that's because it's either using a localizer or some other distance measuring equipment, you know, VOR, whatever it is, to get the DME. Anyway, so this is just purely an NDB approach, which means we have no distance information. The only thing we're going to have is a little arrow telling us which way is this beacon. So to help facilitate this, we're going to turn off the NDs. We'll put them on into, I guess if we put them on into VOR mode, and we set these over to ADF. I mean, they're both tuned the same, so I'll just use the one. That then, in theory, is going to give us a needle direct towards, in this case, 322, which is indeed tuned in. I've tuned that in Roger Lima. And again, if you want a little reminder on how to do that, come down to your little device here. If it's Airbus, if it's Boeing, it's easy. You just come down here and tune it in. But if it's Airbus, come over to your radio page. Down here under ADF1 or ADF2, or indeed both, put in the letters there, Roger Lima, and as soon as you put that in, verify that the frequency is correct. If I recall, there was a couple of beacons, 322, that lines up 322, and with that you're good to go. Alright, so with that little intro out the way, let's take a look through the charts. First off, here we go, La Rochelle, France. Of course, we're on the western coast of France, famously used during the war by the U-boats, and of course many other things. Bordeaux, famous for its wine, not far away. Roquefort, of course, the big time stinky cheese people, also just 20 or so miles down the coast. But for us, it's La Rochelle. Runway 7,400 feet long, more or less down at sea level. We see 60 feet at one end, 71 feet at the other end. So as far as density altitude goes, basically sea level. Main buildings in the middle, so either end it's going to be a backtrack. You've got general aviation as well as 4 terminal stands for larger aircraft. And here we see it 1, 2, 3, 4 there on parking spot Charlie. Anything else to notice here? Some info about parachutes and the like doesn't affect us. Stuff to do with 180-degree turns for heavy aircraft. In case we damage the airfield, nothing really to do with us. We've got the ATIS there, 126.88. I found at least in XPlane. It's almost I can't hear it, at least not in the Airbus. Listen to this. I can hear that there's something crackling, but I can't make it out. Alright, so taking a look at the approach itself then, it's, as we've said, it's a pure NDB. There is no sort of DME. And we can see it starts here at the 322 or the Roger Lima NDB. If we take a look here, we've got the vertical profile. Just to verify, we do indeed start on the NDB. We then swing out in a certain direction, and it depends on what speed we're doing as to which direction. We'll be taking the faster of the two, at least initially, so we'll be on 123 outbound from the NDB, descend down to 2.5, and then take a look at this. Start the turn, maximum speed 150, 2 minutes, 200 knots. Then we only have 1.5 minutes until we can start the turn. And we will be 200 knots at least initially, maximum speed. And so we'll have to get the stopwatch out, which of course is part and parcel of using an NDB. We'll take a closer look at that in a minute, but suffice here, look, final approach 3.21 degrees, and it is 2.9 miles until the missed approach point. Alright, so coming over to the star page then, La Rochelle, if I recall, it had either 2 or 3 stars, but the only one that we're interested in is this one here that brings us to the NDB. See here, all roads lead into Rome, whether we're coming from the south, from the northwest, or from the northeast, or indeed coming from the east. There are more approaches for La Rochelle. You know, you've got your RMPs and there is an ILS there as well. We're not interested in that today. We're just doing pure NDB, so we're not even going to tune the localizer in. Notice here that the beginning of our star is a fix known as Maren, and that leads us inbound on 357. And if we take a look over on the maps, you'll have to come over to your lower charts. If you look on the higher charts, you won't find it. And you'll see here we've got an airway known as the Alpha 25, and that brings us through Royan and then Maren. Now that Alpha 25 airway continues on. We're going to obviously jump off the airway at Maren to begin our start. Now it is a low one, we're already low down. Something else to note then, 6 Delta, 6 Lima, depends, are we going to go around a little bit of an arc or just proceed direct on in? Now that's going to be entirely up to the controller, because if you take a look, both of them are going to bring you to the same place anyway, the NDB here, 322. Once we are at the NDB, it's time to jump on over to the NDB approach, known as the NDB Yankee runway 27 left at La Rochelle. Final approach course 272 degrees, minimums there for the NDB 1,380, decision height 540. So the minimum out when it comes to the NDB there, we need to make sure we stay at or above that height until we begin our final descent. And it looks to me, rather than being a minimum, I think it should more like be a mandatory. And so once we go away from the NDB, it's 2,500 feet. We start the turn. Once we're inbound, we're cleared to descend on a head-in, inbound to the NDB at 273 degrees. Once we cross the NDB, it's 1 degree to the left on 272 and the 3.2 down. Again, we could just load this approach in, let the Airbus do it itself, but that would be boring and defeat the objective of today. And last but not least, we've got the minimum heights for the area here at La Rochelle. We can see basically it's 2,000 MSA, at least insofar as we're concerned. We're currently just outside the protected area there. We're about to cross into it. We'll certainly be in it once we exit the hold there. And so with that done, I think we've done with the briefing, at least initially. I am going to get the aircraft to fly the Star, but then we're going to fly the NDB ourselves. And so in order to pull this off, I'm going to have to tell the aircraft I want it to do the NDB approach, and then basically as we get there say, oh no, I don't. And so if we take a look now, destination Lima Fox Bravo Hotel, that's where we're going. Arrival. And if we scroll on through, there's the NDB 27 Yankee. Yes, please. Star. Marin 6 Lima. And to verify exactly what that's called, we can see it up here. Mar 6 Lima. Click via. All right, RL1, RL2. How do you know which one you need? I think it depends entirely on which aircraft. Are you a heavier, so RL1, or a lighter option, RL2? And this is the via that is going to connect up to our NDB approach. Well, here we see 1 and 2 labeled, but that's not RL1 and 2. That could be confusing. That's just to do with these notes here. But we'll be able to verify we've got the right one afterwards by seeing, does it give us 110 degrees or 123? So let's hit RL1. I suspect that's going to be the correct one. Transition none, because there is no other option. We'll temp that in. And if we scroll on through, here we see Roger Lima, which is our NDB here. And then here we see Delta 123 Echo. Well, 123, here we see it, 1, 2, 3. And so we know that is the correct approach which we want. And again, we're going to clear it out anyway. It's just to fly the Star. So I'm going to accept that, temp that in. And at this point, we'll come over to the flight plan page. We'll hit the immediate exit. And with that, take a quick look at the ND. There we go. So my plan is, and again, you can let the Airbus just fly this NDB approach and do it all basically for you. But I want to do it myself, and so that's what we're going to do. Now, looks like here, minimum holding out is 2.5, max speed 220. And so with that, I'm going to reduce to 220. Might as well do it now. I'll pull that, and we'll start descending down to 3,000. There's no reason why not. As we've seen, we're inside the protected area, and that gets us to comply. Now, once we're in the hold, max speed 220. Once we exit the hold and begin the approach procedure, max speed we see here is 200 knots. And so my plan is just to let the autopilot fly in the Star, but once we get near to the NDB, I'm going to disconnect and I'm going to put myself into the bird, and we'll have the VOR page selected here, which of course, using this switch, we've actually changed over to the ADF. I've turned your side off just for clutter purposes, and so it's going to be the NDB my side, and that is it. Light winds. Speaking of which, by the way, you know, don't forget to put your approach stuff in. I did that ahead of time. So if we come to the performance, 3045, temps 2 degrees. Winds were light and variable, so I put 00. We've got the trans-flight level in of 50, and that looks like the trans-alt as well is 5,000. I didn't actually verify if it was 50, but I'm almost sure it will be. It's going to be on the arrivals, if it's anywhere. Trans level by ATC, so we'll leave it at default 50. We've got our VAP speed there of 140 knots. Well, we take a look at this NDB approach. Not authorized for category Delta aircraft. If you know the approach categories on aircraft it's not really based on size of the aircraft or even on weight, but actually the approach speed. And if I remember right, and I could be wrong, that the category Delta starts at 141 knots or greater. So if we're at 140 knots, which here we are, that actually puts us into a category Charlie. That makes us legit to do the approach. So something there also to bear in mind. MDA then is 540, and I have got that from Not the circle to land, but over here. Where are we? Here we go. Straight in, runway 27. 540 on the Barrow or 466 on the Radal, which is your decision height in the Airbus. So I'm going to just go with the barometric on 540. And so with that, we've got a circle to land possible, prohibited south, so we could do it north side. We're not gonna. And yeah, so with the timer, what I'm gonna do is actually, we'll use, let's have a little look. Yeah, we'll use this one. It's going to be nice and precise. So I'll stop that. I'll reset. That's what we're going to use. For now, let's switch back to the arc. We've got about 20 miles to go. And here we see La Rochelle. So I'm going to turn that off till we get a little closer. Here on the X-plane, the way that the coastline was and the town and was basically exactly the same as the World War II game. I could literally see, even though we're in an entirely different simulator, where my submarine is both docked and the way that it has to go to then get outside the harbour wall of La Rochelle. So, I know some people are going to say, well, big wow, but to me, that was quite something, It was one of those little things that makes you appreciate how far, at least for me, games have come on. Now, as we see here, there is a hold at the NDB, and the hold's always going to be based on a time. Certainly, granted, you can get the Airbus to know, because it knows where it is, you can artificially put a distance in, but really it's going to be based on a time. We see it's a right-hander, inbound 115, and that's going to bring us over the beacon, and then, I think I'm just going to give it something like 60 seconds, something like that. May even tighten it up a bit, give ourselves 45 seconds. We'll see if it, or 0.6 minutes. We'll see what we can do. So as we get ever closer, here we see what the autopilot has in store. And so what I'm going to do is put it onto the bird, and I'm going to pull the heading. And at this point, it's what we want now. So I think I'm going to give myself a discontinuity on purpose, just so that we lose directional information. Just going to say runway 27, no start, no via, no transition. Okay. And then with that, we're just manually flying in. And again, we're going to get rid of the ND, so let's do that now, so that there's no cheating. And we just look at the needle here. There's the changeover, so we'll go local 3045. Your side. Third thing we're going to do, and we know we're coming up to the beacon. We see our aircraft here. Beacon, I find this cheating, so we're going to turn that off today. And yeah, coming in. So once we get to the beacon, I'm thinking, is it a direct entry? Yes. But prohibited if speed exceeds 165. So I'm guessing it's going to be more like a teardrop. So we'll try, see if we can do that. And that dude's car alarm, he needs talking to again. He's not doing anything. Now, because we don't, again, you'd see it coming on the ND, but we don't know. And again, we've got no range information because it's ADF. Again, we're doing it old school. So we got to wait literally for the needle to spin round. And that's why we're not cheating here. And here we see it, by the way. So if I turn that off real quick, here is the entrance. So you see these islands as well coming in here with the U-boat. It's like a lighthouse here and here that's not depicted in XPlane. And you start seeing more and more harbour stuff. And then here was the real entrance to the harbour area. A lot more built up than it was in World War II. And you've got some locked gates right around here somewhere. And then as you move in, literally the U-boat pen was right up against the side here. And so it, you know, it's nice to see at least the coastline matching up perfectly. And so here we are now, 3,000 feet and reducing speed. Remember, max was 200 in the hold. Oh no, it's 220, correction, but I'm going to go for 200. Yeah, there we see the arrows pointing behind us now, so we can start our left turn for the teardrop entry. So my plan is, again, we need to be basically in the hold in a clockwise direction, if you like. We've come from down here, so, you know, to do the teardrop, I'm going to come this way. So I want to be even further than 270. 295 minus 45 is what I want to be on, so that's going to make us 250, yeah. Now once it's wings level, I'm going to start my clock for the first time. And looks like the wings are about to level off now. Let's get ready. And again, we're flying all of these as tracks. 3. And there we go. We're within a degree or so wings level. So starting the clock. Going to give us 45 seconds, and then I'm going to right hand turn, and hopefully at that point we'll be able to go direct towards the NDB. Also, if you recall, once we're at the NDB outbound, we can descend to 2.5, so I'm going to select my altitudes there to hundreds of feet. We've got about 10 seconds left. And once we cross the NDB, it's outbound on a heading of 123, max speed 200, which we have set. Alright, there's 45 seconds. Let's start the right-hand turn then. We'll get it going, at least initially. And then it will be direct towards the NDB, which is ideally going to be on an inbound heading of 115. And it looks like when we roll up, it's going to be very close. Again, this green arrow here pointing directly towards the NDB. That's the only clue about anything that we have. So there we go, 115. And it looks like when this turn completes, we're going to be quite close, potentially overshooting just a little bit. And we'll have time to correct once that turn has been complete. And so there we see, yeah, we're right in line now, but we're like 90 degrees still to go in the turn, so we already know we're going to have to correct. So I'm going to put like a 20-degree correction in, 135, and we'll straighten it out once we're in line. Now, once we pass over the NDB, we need to then turn onto a heading of 123. So we need to make sure that we're on the right heading, going in the right direction, at least initially. How long do we continue on the heading for 123 after passing the NDB? Well, again, depends on the speed. And here we see it. 1.5 minutes if we're doing 200, up to 200. 2 minutes if we're 150 or less. And so here we see it now, directly towards the NDB ahead of us. We've got a few more degrees left to go in the turn. May as well stop this. We'll reset. NDB currently on a heading of 125 degrees, and so we've got about 10 degrees to fix. I'm just going to increase the angle a little bit to help us out, and again, we ideally want this needle right on 115, and that indicates then we're right in line here. So we've got about 7 degrees or so to go, and that's going to come round quite quick now because we're getting quite close. And so let's close the track now to 115. We'll just proceed direct towards the NDB otherwise. There we go, that's going to be close enough. 115, and we're going to wait for the needle to spin, and as soon as it does, it's 1, 2, 3, wait for wings level, and then we start the clock, and we've got 90 seconds. I see no reason as well why we can't also reduce to 190 knots. We'll go flaps 2. We'll take this opportunity to prepare a couple of other things. We'll go auto brake 2. NDB arrow's starting to drift a little bit. I am going to chase it a little bit just so we don't come too far away, but we know based on how fast it's moving that we're very close there. We've seen it shift at least 10 or so degrees. And there it disappears, so cone of confusion. And so I'm going to set my track now 1, 2, 3, put us on this outbound leg. Speed 190, also we're clear to descend down to 2.5, so 2.5. I'm going to use the flight path angle just to make it nice and gentle. 1, 2, 3, wings are level. Oops, I start the wrong clock. My mistake, there we go. And it did take us about 10 seconds to work through all of that. So instead of waiting the full 1 minute 30, we'll go 1 minute 20. Once we start the turn and resume facing inbound, then we can continue our descent down to 1,000, basically 400, right? Because we can't dial 1380 in here.
2,500.
I'm actually going to use the turn at the end as my opportunity to reduce speed to the approach speed. So I've got about 50 knots to shave off. And with about 30 seconds to go until we turn to final, let's just come upstairs. I should have already had my landing light somewhere below 10, but either way, let's just do all of that. Wing lights, get all of that on. Smoking signs. And once we do the left-hand turn, it's left until we face 273 on the track direct towards, once again, the NDB. Once we cross the NDB, we turn 272 on the track and we start our 3.2 degree down from 1,380. There's 1 minute 30, kind of crapped up on me there. So there's the start of the turn. We said we were going to use the turn to start reducing speed as well. So let's do so. I'm going to go for about 160 at the flaps speed, a couple of knots for the buffer there. Keep the turn going. 273 we want. Direct towards the NDB. So in theory, when we exit this turn, we'll be heading straight towards this green arrow. And of course, we'll be refining our heading or our track somewhat to ensure that takes place. It looks like we're able to turn this quite tightly. So what I'm going to do is just ease off the track. That's probably in large part because we reduced the speed there, which has given us a much tighter turning circle. So what I'm going to do is roll off here just to ensure that we get this green arrow lined up as soon as possible. And now that we're heading inbound again, we can continue descending down to 1,380. So to the nearest 100, that's going to be 1,004. I'm going to use my flight path angle to do it. We'll come down at about 2.2 degrees. Here we see the heading towards the NDB, currently about 280, 281 degrees. So what I'm going to do is roll this as close towards the green as possible. If anything, just a hair to the right. Again, in a perfect world, this would be lined up with 273 degrees. You see there, 279. 277. So we're within about 3 or 4 degrees. We're coming down. Let's dump the gear. Flaps 3. I'm going to go performance. I guess approach speed's activated, so I'm going to go managed on the speed. And now we see the NDB is more like 273, so let's keep the turn going. And that's now lined up perfectly. And so once we see that NDB either swing around or disappear in the cone of confusion, we can start this 3.2 down. Now, if it all goes wrong, we need to be up and to 2.5. And so as soon as we level off here, let's arm the spoilers now. Check the cabin. Flaps full to go. I hit the wrong one. There we go. Hit them all if in doubt. So I'm going to go flaps 4 once we begin the 3.2 down. And I'm just coming left because it looks like the NDB is ever so slightly trended to the left. Runway is in sight, so we know it can't be too long until this 3.2 goes. We are level now, so I'm going to wind this up to 2.5. Now, we're still maintaining level flight. That's my missed approach height. I'm going to pre-select. And there's now the cone of confusion. We see the arrow there disappear in the green arrow. So down by 3.2. Pull that, down we go. And at this point, we're tracking into land. Reset this to 2.2. Was it 273 or was it 272? It was 272. Correction. There we go. 272 on the track. And so with that, zooming in.
1,000.
Kind of hard to see at that zoom. Let's zoom out a little bit. There we go. 2 whites, 2 reds. We're in line. Your full, nice NDB approach. Flaps full to go. We'll stick those out now. We'll disconnect at minimums.
100 above.
Alright, let's disconnect.
500. Minimum.
Continue. My plane.
100. 300. 200.
Quite a displaced threshold thanks to those trees.
50. 40.
Closing the power.
20. Retard. 10. 5.
Down we go. Unlock the reversers. Idle reverse. And we'll get the brake fans on and all. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to La Rochelle on the NDB 27 approach. I think it was the NDB Yankee for runway 27. As you see there, you basically kick out all the automation, you reduce it to the bare minimums, and you follow it as prescribed. And as you see, if you do it as prescribed, drops you out right in front of the runway, in line, 2 whites, 2 reds. Not more than 2 degrees did we have to tinker with at the end there to get it straight. I hope you enjoyed that, and until next time, wherever in the world you may be, take care, and from me, goodbye.